He's not dead. Black Waitress halted a Korean mafia boss's funeral. What happened next shocked everyone. The white lilies above the casket trembled each time someone passed, their petals releasing a scent so heavy it felt like drowning. I'd been serving private Korean events in Los Angeles' Koreatown for 3 years now, but I'd never felt death watching me back quite like this. The air inside the candlelit hall was thick with incense smoke and something else. Fear dressed up as grief. My hands ached from balancing the lacquered tray of tea and rice wine for 6 hours straight, weaving between men whose tailored black suits probably cost more than my car. Women in dark hanbok whispered prayers in Korean I could only half understand, their voices carrying that particular reverence reserved for the dangerous and the dead. Kyung-soo. What a loss. Such a young man, only 38. Heart failure, they're saying. I wasn't supposed to be listening. Mrs. Choi, the event coordinator who hired me, had been clear during my first shift. Serve. Bow if necessary. Disappear. That's what kept servers like me employed, knowing how to become furniture. And I was even better at it than most. The only black woman in a sea of Korean mourners. My brown skin making me simultaneously impossible to miss and utterly invisible. But something about this funeral felt staged. Maybe it was the way the younger men positioned themselves along the walls like soldiers instead of mourners, their eyes scanning exits with the precision of bodyguards expecting trouble. Maybe it was the bulges I'd noticed beneath several suit jackets. Guns? I realized with a jolt of cold recognition, even here, even now. Or maybe it was the casket itself, positioned at the hall's center like a throne, drowning in enough white lilies and silk banners to fill a florist's entire inventory. I'd heard whispers about Kyung-soo. Everyone who worked Koreatown events had. They called him a business tycoon in public. He owned restaurants, real estate, investment firms. But the servers, the kitchen staff, the people who moved through these circles without being seen, we knew the truth. Beneath the legitimate empire ran rivers of darker enterprise. Protection rackets, underground networks, things people like me never mentioned aloud if we valued our safety. The so-called business tycoon was a king, and now apparently a corpse. I moved through the crowd, offering rice wine to hands that took cups without seeing my face. My feet screamed in the cheap heels I'd bought on clearance, and I could feel a blister tearing open with each step. The black dress I wore, the only formal thing I owned that seemed funeral appropriate, clung to my back despite air conditioning set cold enough to preserve the flowers. Jogijo. A hand gripped my elbow. I turned to find an elderly woman in traditional mourning dress, her hair pulled into a severe bun, her eyes sharp as obsidian. She spoke in rapid Korean, gesturing sharply toward the casket. I caught fragments. Flowers. Wilting. Fix. I'm sorry, I don't. I began in English. Coat. She pointed more forcefully at the casket. Gotchio. Fix them. Now. Her tone wasn't a request. It was a command that came from decades of being obeyed without question. My stomach dropped. Maemme, y serve drinks. I'm not supposed to. Jaigiam. Now. Her voice didn't rise, but something in that single word, that particular Korean authority I'd learned to recognize, made my throat tighten. I set down my tray with trembling hands and walked toward the casket, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. The crowd parted around me like I was contagious, and suddenly I felt exposed in a way that made my skin prickle with warning. I was too visible now, walking through the sea of Korean mourners toward their fallen king, a black waitress with no right to approach the sacred dead. Some eyes followed me with thinly veiled disapproval. Others looked through me like I was a ghost they'd already forgotten. As I approached, details sharpened into focus. The lacquered wood casket with brass handles polished to a mirror shine, the silk interior, the perfectly arranged chrysanthemums and lilies creating a frame around the body. Kyung-soo lay perfectly still in a charcoal suit, hands folded across his chest, looking more asleep than dead in the way bodies sometimes do when death is fresh. I'd never seen a dead person before. My grandmother had been cremated after her funeral. Closed casket, brief service I could barely afford. I didn't know what I expected death to look like. I reached toward a drooping lily near his shoulder, my hand shaking, and that's when I saw his throat move. But before I tell you what happened next, if you're loving this story, Smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens when a funeral becomes a crime scene. Trust me, you won't believe where this goes. Now, back to the moment everything changed. Let me back up. Because to understand how a black waitress ended up holding a mafia boss's pulse in her fingertips while his entire organization watched, you need to know how I got here. And more importantly, you need to know why I couldn't stay silent even when silence would have saved my life. People always told me I blended into the background. A black waitress working private events in Los Angeles' Koreatown. I learned early how to move quietly, bow slightly, and never ask questions. That rule kept me alive until the night I broke it. After Kyung-soo's eyes opened in that casket, after the screams and the guns and Dr. Soo-jin's diagnosis of tetrodotoxin poisoning, after he rasped those words, "Someone wanted me buried alive," everything moved fast. Too fast for me to understand I was no longer leaving. "She shouldn't leave," the tall man with the scarred jaw said, stepping into my path as I tried to back away from the chaos. His voice was calm, factual. "Boss, she's a witness. That's how I became a prisoner in a mansion I couldn't afford to clean." Kyung-soo's estate sat in the Hollywood Hills like a fortress pretending to be a home. High walls, iron gates, men who never smiled patrolling the grounds with earpieces and guns they didn't bother hiding anymore. Not from me. They gave me a room on the second floor, beautiful in the way expensive prisons are. Silk bedding, marble bathroom, windows that didn't open. I didn't sleep that first night. Every footstep in the hallway made my heart jump. Every distant voice in Korean made me wonder if they were deciding what to do with me. The scarred man was named Min-kyu. I learned that the next morning when he appeared in my doorway without knocking, arms crossed, eyes studying me like I was evidence at a crime scene. "You knew," he said. "No greeting. No preamble." I sat up straighter on the bed, still wearing yesterday's funeral dress. Knew what? That he wasn't dead. Min-kyu stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a soft click that felt like a threat. "Why?" I saw him breathe. My voice came out steadier than I felt. His throat moved. His chest rose. "You could be lying. I could be—" I snapped, fear sharpening into anger. "But I saved him. If I wanted him dead, I would have kept my mouth shut." Something flickered in Min-kyu's expression, not quite belief, but consideration. He moved to the window, looking out at the grounds below. "You understand what you've walked into? A funeral that wasn't a funeral. A war." He turned back to me. "Someone tried to kill Kyung-soo and frame it as natural death. You stopped that, which means you're either very brave or very stupid. Can't I be both?" His mouth almost twitched. "Almost. The boss wants to see you." Kyung-soo's office was all dark wood and leather, the kind of room designed to intimidate. He sat behind a massive desk, looking stronger than he had in the casket, though I could still see the pallor beneath his skin, the shadow of how close he'd come to being buried alive. He studied me for a long moment before speaking. "Why did you speak?" His English was perfect, barely accented. "At the funeral. Why didn't you stay silent?" I met his gaze, forcing myself not to look away even though every instinct screamed at me to show deference, to bow, to disappear. Because people don't deserve to be buried alive. Even you. The silence stretched between us like a held breath. "Even me," he repeated slowly, something unreadable crossing his face. "You don't know who I am. I know enough. Everyone in Koreatown knows enough." I wrapped my arms around myself. "You're the kind of man people whisper about, the kind they're afraid to name out loud. And yet you saved me." "I saved a person," I corrected. I didn't stop to check his resume first. Kyung-soo leaned back in his chair, still watching me with that intense focus that made me feel stripped bare. "You're honest. Foolishly honest. You asked a question. I answered it. In my world, people lie to survive. In mine," I said quietly, "we tell the truth because we've got nothing left to lose." He stood then, moving around the desk with the careful grace of someone still recovering. "You're not Korean. You don't understand our traditions, our hierarchy, our way of doing things." "No," I admitted. But I understand being treated like I don't exist. I understand being invisible until someone needs something from me. I lifted my chin. And I understand that whoever poisoned you is still out there. Yes. His voice went cold. They are. So what happens to me now? Kyung-soo was quiet for a moment, his gaze moving to the window where Min-kyu stood guard outside. That depends on who tried to kill me, and whether they know you're the one who stopped them. My blood went cold. You're staying here, he continued, until we know it's safe, or until we don't. I'm a prisoner. You're protected, he corrected. There's a difference. Is there? I challenged. Because I can't leave. I can't call anyone. I can't. You can stay alive. The hardness in his voice stopped me mid-sentence. Which is more than I can guarantee if you walk out that gate. I wanted to argue, wanted to demand my freedom, my phone, my life back. But something in his eyes, something tired and true, told me he wasn't lying. I was inside a world that killed quietly now. And the only thing standing between me and disappearing forever was the man I'd saved from his own grave. Dr. Soo-jin arrived at the estate the next morning with lab results that confirmed what we already feared and revealed what we didn't. I wasn't supposed to be in the room when she briefed Kyung-soo. But Min-kyu had started treating me less like a prisoner and more like a fixture. Something present but not quite acknowledged. So when Dr. Soo-jin spread her findings across the conference table, I stood in the corner, invisible again in the way I'd perfected. Tetrodotoxin, she said, her finger tracing a line on the toxicology report. Extremely rare, derived from pufferfish. It paralyzes the respiratory system, slows the heart to near danger. The victim appears dead. No pulse detectable by normal means. Body temperature drops, pupils fixed. She looked up at Kyung-soo. You would have been buried alive within hours. Conscious but unable to move or scream. My stomach turned. I remembered his throat twitching, that faint rise of his chest. How long? Kyung-soo's voice was eerily calm. In that casket? Suffocation would take 6 to 8 hours. Maybe less. Dr. Soo-jin's clinical tone couldn't hide the horror of it. Whoever did this wanted you to wake up in the dark. Underground. Source? Min-kyu asked from his position by the door. That's the question. Dr. Soo-jin pulled out another document. I tested everything from the funeral, the tea, the rice wine, the ceremonial offerings. Only one thing came back positive. She paused. The mayak guk, the seaweed soup. Kyung-soo went very still. Who prepared it? According to the kitchen staff. Dr. Soo-jin hesitated, glancing at me briefly before continuing. Hygiene personally oversaw its preparation. Said it was tradition, bride-to-be honoring the family. The name hung in the air like poison itself. Hygiene, the cousin's fiancé, one of the 5 families. Where is she now? Kyung-soo's voice dropped to something deadly quiet. Min-kyu's jaw tightened. Gone. Disappeared the morning after the funeral. Her apartment is empty. Her phone is off. Her family claims they haven't heard from her. They're lying. Probably. Over the next 2 days, I learned how quickly whispers become wars. The 5 families, the Korean organizations that controlled everything from legitimate businesses to the darker enterprises no one named aloud, began circling like sharks scenting blood. They arrived at the estate in expensive cars, men in tailored suits with hard eyes and harder questions. I served them tea, played invisible, listened. Kyung-soo's survival changes everything, one elder said in Korean, his voice carrying through the cracked door where I stood in the hallway. If he died, we would have blamed the Japanese. Started the war Hygiene's family wanted. A power vacuum they could exploit, another voice added. But he didn't die. A woman's voice cut in sharply. Because of that black girl. The waitress. My blood went cold. An accident, someone dismissed. She couldn't have known. Accident or not, she ruined the plan. Hygiene's family needed that war to justify taking territory. Now they have nothing but a failed assassination and a missing daughter. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Hygiene hadn't just wanted Kyung-soo dead. She'd wanted his death to look natural until it was too late, then wanted someone to discover it was murder. Blame the Japanese rivals. Start a war while the Korean families fought each other for control. Her family would sweep in during the chaos, claiming territory, power, legitimacy. I'd stopped all of it by noticing a heartbeat. That night, I found Kyung-soo on the terrace, staring out at the city lights below. They want her found, I said quietly. He didn't turn. Yes. What happens when they find her? Justice. Their version of it. I wrapped my arms around myself against the evening chill. How many people die because I saved you? Now he looked at me, his expression unreadable in the darkness. How many people die if you hadn't? I don't know. Maybe just you. And then war. Hundreds dead. Families destroyed. Territory burned. His voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing whether Hygiene's plan would have worked. She would have gotten everything she wanted, built on corpses and chaos. But now she gets nothing, and her family will pay for her ambition. I thought about that, about how saving one life had triggered a different kind of death. How my instinct to speak up had disrupted carefully laid plans that stretched beyond anything I understood. I didn't ask for this, I whispered. No, Kyung-soo agreed. You just saw someone dying and refused to stay silent. In my world, that makes you either very dangerous or very valuable. Which one am I? He was quiet for a long moment. I haven't decided yet. Inside, Min-kyu appeared in the doorway, his face grim. Boss, the families are demanding a meeting. They want answers. And they want the girl. Me. They wanted me. The meeting was held in a private room at one of Koreatown's oldest restaurants. The kind of place that closed its doors to regular customers when certain people wanted privacy. I was brought in like evidence. Min-kyu walked on my right, another guard on my left. Neither touched me, but their presence was a cage I couldn't escape. The hallway smelled of expensive whiskey and old wood, the kind of scent that clung to places where power had lived for generations. The room itself was traditional, low tables, floor cushions, paper screens. 5 men and 2 women sat in a semicircle, their ages ranging from 50s to what looked like 80s. They wore expensive modern clothes, but their faces held something ancient. Authority that didn't need to be proven. The 5 families. The real government of Koreatown's underworld. Kyung-soo sat to the side, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. He didn't look at me as I was positioned in the center of the room, standing while they sat. A deliberate power dynamic that made my knees want to buckle. An elderly man with silver hair spoke first in Korean. Min-kyu translated quietly beside me. This is the woman? Yes, Kyung-soo answered in English, his eyes finally meeting mine for just a moment. A foreigner, a woman said, her tone making it sound like a disease. An outsider who doesn't understand our ways. She saved my life, Kyung-soo stated simply. She disrupted a plan that would have revealed itself naturally, another elder countered. Hygiene's scheme would have collapsed. We would have discovered the poisoning, blamed the proper enemies, handled it internally. After I was buried, Kyung-soo said coldly. Perhaps, but now we have chaos instead of strategy. Hygiene's family knows we know. They've gone defensive. The Japanese are confused. Our allies question our strength. The silver-haired man leaned forward. All because this woman spoke out of turn. My throat tightened. I wanted to defend myself, to scream that I'd only tried to save a life, but the weight of their stares crushed the words before they could form. What do you propose? Kyung-soo asked, his voice dangerously quiet. She must prove loyalty, the woman said. If she wishes to remain under your protection, under our tolerance, she must demonstrate she understands our world. How? But I could hear in Kyung-soo's tone that he already knew. The silver-haired elder smiled without warmth. When we find Hygiene, this woman will execute her. Personally, in front of the families. The room tilted. No. The word came out as barely a whisper. Yes, the elder continued, ignoring me. Blood for disruption. Justice for chaos. If she kills the one who tried to kill you, she proves herself worthy of our protection. If she refuses, He spread his hands. Then she is simply a liability. A foreigner who knows too much. A weakness that will destroy you. Kyung-soo. She is not one of us, another elder added. She will never be one of us. But she can be useful or she can be eliminated. The choice is yours. I looked at Kyung-soo, my heart hammering so hard I could barely breathe. His jaw was tight, a muscle twitching beneath the skin. No, he said. The room went still. No. The silver-haired man's voice carried a dangerous edge. She will not kill for me? Kyung-soo stood slowly, his authority filling the space. She is not trained, not willing, not part of this world by choice. Then she is a weakness, the woman said coldly. And weaknesses get people killed. You especially. That, Kyung-soo said quietly, is my burden to carry. We will not protect her, the elder warned. If Hyejine's family comes for her, and they will, she is on her own. If rivals see her as your vulnerability, they will exploit it. If she becomes a problem. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The meeting ended with tea that tasted like ash in my mouth. Min-kyu drove us back to the estate in silence. When we arrived, Kyung-soo dismissed the guards and led me to his office, closing the door with a soft click. They will hunt you, he said without preamble, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey with steady hands. Hyejine's family, the families who see you as disruption. Anyone who wants to hurt me will see you as the easiest target. My hands shook as I took the glass. Then let me go. He looked up sharply. Let me disappear. I continued, my voice breaking. I'll leave LA. Change my name. You said it yourself. I'm not part of this world. I don't want to be. Where would you go? His voice was soft, almost gentle. Anywhere. Somewhere they won't find me. There is nowhere. He set down his glass and stepped closer, his eyes holding mine. They have reached beyond this city, beyond this state. And now that you're connected to me, now that you've been seen, marked, judged by the families. He shook his head. Running won't save you. Then what will? The question hung between us in the silence. I won't sacrifice you for tradition, Kyung-soo said finally, his voice rough with something I couldn't name. I won't make you a killer to satisfy old men's sense of order. And I won't let them erase you because you don't fit their world. Why? I whispered. Why does it matter? I'm just. You're the woman who brought me back from death, he interrupted. The woman who spoke when silence would have been safer. The woman who saw me as a person, not a position. He paused, something vulnerable crossing his features. That matters. The air between us felt charged, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with the families or Hyejin or any of it. This is insane, I said, but I didn't step away. Yes, he agreed. It is. Our bond had become the most dangerous thing in the room, and neither of us knew how to break it without breaking ourselves. The gunfire started at 3 a.m. I woke to Min-kyu's hand clamped over my mouth, his face inches from mine in the darkness. Don't scream, he whispered in English. Get up. Now. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard it. Sharp cracks echoing through the mansion, glass shattering, men shouting in Korean. The acrid smell of smoke curled under my bedroom door. What's happening? I stumbled out of bed, still in the oversized t-shirt I slept in. They're here. Min-kyu thrust a jacket at me, already moving toward the door. Hyejine's family, maybe others. Put this on and stay behind me. The hallway was chaos. Guards rushed past with weapons drawn, their faces grim and focused. Smoke billowed up from the first floor, thick and black. Somewhere below, I heard Kyung-soo's voice shouting orders in rapid Korean, commanding and sharp despite the mayhem. Stairs, Min-kyu commanded, gripping my arm. We descended into hell. The grand staircase was slick with something dark. Blood, I realized with a lurch of nausea. Bodies of guards I'd seen patrolling the grounds now lay crumpled against the walls. The front entrance had been blown open, night air rushing in along with shadows carrying guns. Kyung-soo fought near the entryway, his white shirt torn and blood-stained, a pistol in his hand. He moved with brutal efficiency. 2 shots, a man fell. Pivot, duck, 3 more shots. He wasn't the dignified boss from his office anymore. He was something primal and dangerous. "Boss!" Minkyu shouted. "West Wing is compromised." Kyung-soo's eyes found mine across the smoke and carnage. Something passed over his face. Fear, not for himself, but for me. "Tunnel!" he yelled back. "Get her to the tunnel!" Minkyu pulled me toward the back of the mansion, but masked men poured in from a side corridor, cutting us off. I heard Minkyu curse in Korean as he raised his weapon. "Run!" He shoved me backward. I ran. My bare feet slapped against marble floors as I raced toward where I thought the kitchen was. Smoke burning my lungs, heat from the spreading fire making the air shimmer. Behind me, gunfire exploded in bursts that made my ears ring. The staircase appeared through the smoke, a back route to the upper floor. I grabbed the railing and climbed, desperate to get away from the killing below. Halfway up, my foot slipped on blood or water or my own terror. I pitched forward, the world tilting sickeningly as gravity pulled me toward the hard edges of marble steps that would crack my skull open. Arms caught me. Kyung-soo hauled me against his chest with one arm, the other still gripping his gun. His heart hammered against my cheek, his breathing ragged. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice raw. "Don't let go." He dragged me back down the stairs, keeping his body between me and the direction of gunfire. A masked attacker appeared at the landing, weapon raised. Kyung-soo fired twice without hesitation. The man dropped. We ran through corridors I'd never seen before, Minkyu appearing from the smoke to join us, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. "This way." Minkyu led us to what looked like a wine cellar, but he pulled a hidden lever and a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a tunnel carved into the hillside. "Go!" Kyung-soo pushed me forward into darkness. The tunnel was narrow, lit only by emergency lights spaced every 20 feet. The walls were rough concrete, the air damp and cold against my skin. Behind us, I could hear the roar of flames consuming the mansion, the pop of ammunition cooking off in the heat. We ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. Only when we emerged into a garage a half-mile down the hill, where 3 black SUVs waited with engines running, did Kyung-soo let me stop. I collapsed against the vehicle, gasping, shaking. Through the trees above, I could see flames painting the night sky orange. The mansion, the fortress that was supposed to keep me safe, burned like a funeral pyre. "How many?" Kyung-soo asked Minkyu, his voice hollow. 7 of ours dead. Maybe more." Minkyu wiped blood from his face. "They hit us hard and fast. Knew exactly where the weak points were." "Hygiene. Captured 2 hours ago in Busan," another guard reported, appearing from one of the SUVs with a tablet. "The families have her. They're demanding you return for judgment." Kyung-soo was quiet for a long moment, staring up at the burning hills. "Boss." Minkyu's voice was careful. "What are your orders?" I watched Kyung-soo's profile in the firelight, saw the decision form behind his eyes. "We don't go back," he said quietly. Minkyu inhaled sharply. "That's exile. They'll hunt us. They're already hunting us." Kyung-soo turned to face his lieutenant. "The families want her to kill Hygiene. Want me to prove my loyalty by sacrificing her. They want obedience over justice." His jaw tightened. "I choose neither." "You're choosing her," Minkyu said, and it wasn't quite a question. Kyung-soo's eyes found mine in the darkness. "Yes," he said simply. "I am." And with that word, we became fugitives together, bound not by tradition or territory, but by a choice that would cost us everything. The SUV doors opened. We climbed inside. And as we drove away from the burning mansion, I realized that saving Kyung-soo's life had led to this. Both of us homeless. Both of us hunted. Both of us choosing each other over the world that wanted us dead. They found us 3 days later. Not to kill, not yet. To summon. The 5 families wanted closure. They wanted their spectacle of justice. And they wanted me to deliver it. The message came through Minkyu's encrypted phone. Hygiene has been delivered. The families await your judgment. Come alone or be declared enemy. Kyung-soo stared at the screen for a long time before speaking. They're giving me one chance to fall in line. And if you don't? I asked, though I already knew. Then we become what Hygiene was, targets to be eliminated. We drove to the meeting in silence. The same restaurant, the same private room. But this time, the atmosphere was different. Heavier, charged with the promise of violence. The 5 elders sat in their semicircle, faces carved from stone. Kyung-soo's chair remained empty, a symbolic gesture. He was no longer one of them until he proved himself again. And in the center of the room, bound to a chair with zip ties, sat Hygiene. She looked smaller than I'd imagined. Young, maybe 26. Her designer clothes were rumpled, makeup smeared, but her eyes held defiance even through the fear. When she saw Kyung-soo, she spat in his direction. "Traitor!" she hissed in Korean, then switched to English, looking at me. All this for a black whore who doesn't even. Min-kyu's hand cracked across her face, snapping her head to the side. "Enough!" the silver-haired elder said mildly. He gestured to me. "Come forward, girl." My legs moved against my will, carrying me into the center of the room where Hygiene glared up at me with hatred sharp enough to cut. Another guard appeared, holding something wrapped in black cloth. He unfolded it slowly, revealing a pistol matte black, deadly in its simplicity. He placed it in my hands. The weight of it felt obscene, wrong, like holding someone's death in physical form. "This is the woman who tried to bury Kyung-soo alive," the elder said conversationally. "Who would have started a war that killed hundreds. Who brought shame to her family and chaos to our order." He paused. "Justice demands blood. You disrupted the natural order. You will restore it." I stared at the gun, my hands trembling so violently I nearly dropped it. "I can't," I whispered. "You must," the woman elder said coldly. "This is the price of protection, the cost of belonging. Prove you understand our world, or prove you have no place in it." Hygiene laughed bitterly. "She won't do it. Look at her, she's weak, soft. She doesn't have the spine for." "Shut up," I said, my voice shaking. I raised the gun, pointing it at her head with both hands to keep it steady. Hygiene's eyes widened. For the first time, I saw real fear there. My finger found the trigger, curled around it. One squeeze. That's all it would take. One decision and this nightmare would end. I'd be safe, protected, accepted into their world. All I had to do was become a killer. The gun wavered. Tears blurred my vision. "I can't," I said again, louder this time. "I can't do this." "Then you're useless," the silver-haired elder said dismissively. "And a liability we cannot. I will not make her a murderer." Kyung-soo's voice cut through the room like a blade. He stepped forward, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Every eye turned to him as he crossed the space between us, his expression carved from granite. "She saved my life because she has a conscience," he continued, taking the gun from my shaking hands. "Because she believes people deserve mercy. I will not destroy that to satisfy your sense of tradition." "Then you choose her over your position," the elder warned. "Over your family, over everything you've built." "Yes." Kyung-soo's voice didn't waver. He turned to face Hygiene, raising the pistol with steady hands. "But I do not choose mercy for those who would have buried me alive." He fired. The shot echoed like thunder. Hygiene's head snapped back, her body going limp in the chair. Blood bloomed across the white wall behind her like a grotesque flower. Couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't look away. Kyung-soo lowered the gun, his eyes never leaving the elders. "I choose her," he said into the ringing silence. "Over all of you, over your approval, your protection, your world." His voice dropped to something dangerous. "And if you come for her, you come for me." The silver-haired elder stood slowly, his face expressionless. "Then you are no longer family. You are no longer protected." He gestured to the others. "As of this moment, there is a bounty on the black woman's head. $1 million to whoever delivers her, alive or dead. My knees buckled. Minkyu caught me before I fell. Anyone who shelters her becomes an enemy, the woman elder added. Anyone who aids her dies with her. Kyung-soo took my hand, his fingers warm and solid around mine. So be it, he said. We walked out of that room together, him stained with hygiene's blood, me trembling with the weight of what loving him now meant. Va. Our love had just declared war on the entire underworld, and there was no going back. The safe houses blurred together after a while. Pasadena, San Diego, a cabin near Big Bear, each one temporary, each one chosen by Minkyu for its anonymity and escape routes. We moved every 3 to 5 days, never establishing patterns, never staying long enough to become memorable. I learned to sleep with one eye open, to pack a bag in under 2 minutes, to recognize the sound of Minkyu's specific knock versus anyone else's. This was survival. This was love in the age of bounties. Annyeonghaseyo, Kyung-soo said slowly, watching my mouth as I tried to form the syllables. Anayan. I stumbled over the pronunciation, laughing despite myself. This is impossible. You stopped my funeral in English, he countered, a rare smile tugging at his lips. You can learn to say hello in Korean. We sat cross-legged on the floor of a safe house in Long Beach, cheap takeout containers between us, rain drumming against the windows. Minkyu kept watch outside. Inside, it was just us, 2 people pretending normalcy was possible. Annyeonghaseyo, I tried again. Better. His hand moved to adjust my chin, tilting it slightly. His fingers lingered a moment too long. The tone comes from here. He touched his throat, then mine. Feel it. I felt everything. His proximity, his warmth, the impossibility of this moment. Again, he whispered. Annyeonghaseyo. Perfect. 2 days later, in a different house, I taught him how to make jollof rice over a single electric burner. It's all about the tomato base, I explained, stirring the pot while he watched from the cramped kitchen doorway. My grandmother used to say if your jollof doesn't have depth, you didn't cook it with love. Love. He moved closer, looking over my shoulder. That's the secret ingredient? That, and enough pepper to make you question your life choices. I grinned. Try this. I lifted a spoonful to his lips. He tasted it, his eyes widening slightly. It's spicy, I know, but good, right? Very good. He took the spoon from me, dipping it back into the pot and offering it to me. But I think the secret ingredient is you. Our eyes met over the steam rising from the rice. Kyung-soo. I started, but didn't know how to finish. I know, he said quietly. We shouldn't. It's dangerous. Foolish. Completely insane. Yes. He set down the spoon, his hand moving to cup my face. And yet, late at night, when sleep wouldn't come and danger felt closest, we talked. I was 7 when my father brought me to my first meeting, Kyung-soo said, staring at the ceiling of whatever anonymous bedroom we occupied. I watched him negotiate a treaty with the Japanese families. He was calm, precise, ruthless when needed. He paused. Afterwards, he told me, "This is your inheritance, power and loneliness." Were you lonely? I asked, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Always, until he stopped. Until what? Until a waitress felt my pulse and refused to stay silent. I turned to look at him. You know this is crazy, right? A few weeks ago, I was invisible. Now I have a bounty on my head and I'm sleeping in safe houses with a what? His eyes held mine. Say it. A crime lord. Killer. Someone whose world I don't belong in. And yet you're here. And yet I'm here. I echoed softly. His fingers traced patterns on my shoulder. When I woke up in that casket, the first thing I saw was your face. Terrified but determined. I thought, this woman just saved my life. Then I thought, this woman is going to destroy it. Was I wrong? No. I smiled sadly. You chose me over everything. Your position, your family, your safety. Because you're worth more than all of it. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. "Marry me," he said. I sat up, staring at him. "What? Marry me?" He reached for my hand. "I have nothing to offer you, no mansion, no safety, no future beyond running. But I can offer you this. I will choose you every day until the day I die. And I will make sure that day doesn't come for a very long time. You're insane. Probably." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "But I'm also certain. I was dead, Ayana. Actually dead. And you brought me back. Everything after that moment, it's borrowed time. I want to spend it loving you." Tears blurred my vision. "They'll kill us. Eventually. Maybe." He pulled me closer. "But until then, let them try." I should have said no. Should have run. Should have chosen self-preservation over this beautiful, doomed thing growing between us. Instead, I whispered, "Yes." We married in a church in Santa Barbara at dawn, Mingqiu as our only witness. I wore a white sundress bought from a thrift store. Kyung-soo wore the traditional hanbok he'd somehow had Mingqiu acquire, white and silk, symbolic and sacred. The priest asked no questions when Mingqiu handed him cash. We exchanged vows in English and Korean, our voices steady despite the danger waiting outside. When Kyung-soo kissed me, I tasted salt, his tears or mine, I couldn't tell. "We're married," I said against his lips, laughing and crying at once. "We're doomed," he corrected. "That too." Outside, the world wanted us dead. Inside, we chose each other anyway. Because love, once born, doesn't ask permission. It just demands you survive long enough to fight for it. The war started the day after our wedding. We heard about it through Mingqiu's encrypted channels. 3 assassinations in one night. 2 of Kyung-soo's former allies, shot in their homes. 1 neutral mediator, found in his car with a bullet through his skull. The 5 families were sending a message. Choose Kyung-soo, and you choose death. They're eliminating anyone who might shelter us, Mingqiu reported, his face grim as he showed us the news on his tablet. Making examples. I stared at the photos of the dead men, bile rising in my throat. Because of me. Because of their pride, Kyung-soo corrected, his arm tightening around my shoulders. This would have happened eventually. You were just the excuse they needed. But I saw the truth in his eyes. He blamed himself for choosing me, for loving me, for putting that ring on my finger. I touched the simple gold band, bought from a pawn shop in Santa Barbara, but it might as well have been forged from our combined sins. The months that followed were a blur of violence we only heard about secondhand. Koreatown became a war zone. Territories shifted. Alliances fractured. The Japanese families sensed weakness and pushed into Korean-held districts. Legitimate businesses, restaurants, markets, karaoke bars, closed their doors as protection money dried up and bodies piled higher. All because a waitress noticed a heartbeat. All because a king chose love over empire. We moved 17 times in 4 months. San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, back to California through back roads and borrowed cars. Mingqiu's network of safe houses grew thinner as contacts went silent. Scared, bought off or dead. Some nights, Kyung-soo woke gasping from nightmares about the people dying in his name. Some nights I did too. The truce offer came in February. Mingqiu delivered it personally, his expression carefully neutral as he handed Kyung-soo the formal letter written in Korean calligraphy. "What does it say?" I asked, watching Kyung-soo's jaw tighten as he read. "They're offering terms." His voice was flat. "The war ends. The bounty on you is lifted. We're allowed to live under conditions." My stomach dropped. "What conditions?" He was quiet for a long moment before answering. "You must appear before the 5 families and apologize publicly for disrupting the natural order. You must bow in the traditional manner of asking forgiveness." He looked up at me, pain etched in every line of his face. "You must humiliate yourself before them to prove you know your place. And if I don't? The war continues. More people die. Eventually someone gets lucky and we—" He didn't finish. I understood. "When?" I asked quietly. 3 days. The ceremony was held in the same restaurant where Kyung-soo had executed hygiene. I wore a simple black dress. Mourning colors, Min-kyu explained. My hair was pulled back severely. No makeup. No jewelry except my wedding ring, which I'd been told to remove but refused. The 5 families sat in their semicircle, faces impassive as I entered. Kyung-soo walked beside me, his hand on my lower back. A gesture of support they probably saw as weakness. Behind us, Min-kyu stood guard, though we all knew his gun was useless here. Kneel, the silver-haired elder commanded in English. The cold marble floor bit into my knees as I lowered myself. Hands pressed flat against my thighs in the traditional posture of supplication Min-kyu had taught me. Bow! I bent forward until my forehead touched the floor. The position was designed to humiliate, to make the person bowing feel small, powerless, erased. It worked. Speak your apology, the woman elder said. In Korean. My voice shook as I recited the words Kyung-soo had helped me memorize. Josonghamnida. Hega silsureul aeseubnida. Yongseorul gohamnida. I am sorry. I made a mistake. I beg forgiveness. The words tasted like ash. Silence followed. Long enough that my forehead began to ache against the cold floor. Long enough that shame burned through me like acid. Then I felt Kyung-soo's hand on my shoulder. Enough, he said quietly. I lifted my head slowly, my neck stiff, my vision blurred with unshed tears. Kyung-soo helped me to my feet, his hands steady and warm. He leaned close, his lips brushing my ear as he whispered in English. You bow today. You never bow again. It was a promise, a vow more sacred than our wedding. The silver-haired elder nodded once. The truce is accepted. The bounty is lifted. You may live, but you will never be family. You will never be accepted. You are ghosts in our world. Good, Kyung-soo said, his arm around my waist. Ghosts are harder to kill. We walked out of that restaurant together. My pride shattered on the marble floor behind us. But we walked out alive. And sometimes, survival is the only victory that matters. Outside, Min-kyu had the car running. Where to, boss? He asked as we climbed in. Kyung-soo looked at me, his eyes holding a question. I thought about everything we'd lost. Everything we'd survived. Everything we'd become. Somewhere new, I said. Somewhere we can build something that's ours. Koreatown, Min-kyu asked. No. Kyung-soo's hand found mine, fingers interlacing. Somewhere without ghosts. As we drove away from the restaurant, from the families, from the war we'd survived, I realized something. We'd paid for our love with blood and pride and everything we'd been before. But we were still here, still breathing, still choosing each other. And that, in the end, was the only kingdom that mattered. 1 year later, I stood behind the counter of our restaurant, watching steam rise from bowls of kimchi jjigae and listening to customers laugh under paper lanterns that swayed with the evening breeze. The restaurant wasn't grand. A small storefront in Silver Lake, far enough from Koreatown to be safe, close enough to feel like home. We called it Seround Sijak. New beginning. Min-kyu had laughed at the name, said it was too obvious, too sentimental. Kyung-soo had smiled and said that was exactly the point. I moved through the dining room with a tray of banchan, small dishes of pickled vegetables, seasoned sprouts, fish cakes. My feet still ached at the end of long shifts, but now the restaurant was mine. Ours. The pain felt different when you owned the dream instead of just serving it. Gamsahamnida, I said to a table of college students, setting down their side dishes with practiced ease. They thanked me in English, barely looking up from their phones, unaware that the woman serving their dinner had a bounty on her head just 12 months ago, unaware that she'd stopped a funeral, started a war, and married a king in exile. I was invisible again, but this time by choice. You're smiling. I turned to find Kyung-soo leaning against the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, watching me with that particular expression that still made my heart skip. Part admiration, part disbelief, like he couldn't quite believe I was real. Good tips tonight, I said, holding up the cash from my apron pocket. That's not why you're smiling. He was right. I was smiling because of the elderly Korean woman in the corner who'd complimented my mayakguk in broken English. Because of the young couple on their first date, nervous and hopeful. Because of the normal, beautiful mundanity of a Thursday evening in a restaurant where no one was plotting murder. I'm smiling because we made it, I said quietly. Kyung-soo crossed the room and pulled me close, his lips brushing my forehead. We did. Through the kitchen door, I could see Min-kyu at the stove, somehow transformed from enforcer to surprisingly skilled line cook. He claimed he hated it, but I'd caught him humming while preparing japchae last week. Boss, a server called out. Table 6 wants to speak to the owner about the bulgogi recipe. Tell them it's my wife's grandmother's secret, Kyung-soo called back, winking at me. And we don't share family recipes. I laughed, the sound surprised out of me. My grandmother never made bulgogi in her life. They don't know that. Later, after closing, after counting receipts and wiping down tables, Kyung-soo and I stood on the sidewalk outside our restaurant, looking up at the sign illuminated against the night sky. Do you ever miss it? I asked. The power, the respect, being a king. He shook his head. I was never really a king, Ayana. I was a prisoner pretending to rule. His hand found mine. This, what we have now, this is freedom. Freedom with occasional death threats, I reminded him. Min-kyu still swept for tracking devices weekly. We still used burner phones. We still slept with a gun in the nightstand. Occasional, Kyung-soo agreed with a slight smile. But we're alive, building something real, something that doesn't require blood to maintain. I thought about the journey that brought us here. From that candlelit funeral hall where I felt his pulse beneath my fingertips, through safe houses and gunfire, through humiliation and pride, through choosing each other when choosing each other meant losing everything else. People still talk about us, I said softly. In Koreatown, Min-kyu hears the whispers. What do they say? That I'm the black woman who stopped Kyung-soo's funeral. That I brought a dead man back to life and stole him from his kingdom. I paused. That I'm either the bravest person they've ever heard of or the most foolish. And which do you think you are? I considered the question. A year ago, I would have said foolish. A year ago, I was still learning that saving someone's life could cost you your own. But now, standing outside our restaurant with Kyung-soo's hand warm in mine, I understood something different. Courage and foolishness often look the same from the outside. The only difference is whether you survive long enough to tell the story. Both, I finally answered. I'm both. Kyung-soo kissed me then, slow and certain, tasting like the future we'd fought for. When we pulled apart, I saw a shadow across the street, someone watching. They didn't approach, didn't threaten, just watched. A reminder that our past wasn't fully buried, that enemies still knew our names, still whispered them in rooms we'd never see. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was the woman who felt a heartbeat when everyone else had given up. The woman who spoke when silence would have been safer. The woman who stopped a funeral and changed a kingdom. Some stories, once they begin, refuse to end quietly. They become legends whispered in the dark, passed between servers and soldiers, between the powerful and the invisible. And legends, once born, don't stay buried. They rise. They endure. They become the thing that outlasts even death itself. Ayana learned that saving one life could cost her everything. Her safety, her anonymity, her peace. But she also learned that some people are worth the cost. That love, when chosen against impossible odds, becomes the strongest force in any kingdom. And that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to stay silent, even when the entire world demands your invisibility. Because the woman who stopped a funeral didn't just save a man's life. She saved her own.